In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can get our buttons to trigger actions within our program. We're also going to take a look at naming conventions for the different components that you have and the importance of them. We will be including text fields and capturing data from the user that we can actually make use of throughout other portions of our program. So let's begin. If I have my button over here, which has the capture title, I have my button radio and I have my button combo. When working with each of these buttons and what they do, it's very important that we actually change these variable names, because the moment you begin adding several GUI components like buttons, labels, text fields, the naming convention is what's going to make it much easier for you to access exactly what you want when you'd like to do it, as opposed to trying to figure out which of these is J button 1, J button 2, and J button 3, as you can see here in the navigator in the bottom left. So I normally begin my naming convention by giving the component what it is as a beginning, followed by an underscore, and then what it's supposed to do. So this is the capture button. So button underscore capture. I'm going to say OK. Now, if we need this button to perform an action, we need to double click on it and it will automatically generate a method for you. This action performed method is essentially going to hold the block of code that is run when the button is pressed. So when the button capture has an action that has been performed. What we want the button to do is, if I come back to design, I would like another screen to pop up within this frame, within this panel. So since I'm going to be working with this panel as well, I'm going to call it panel and I'm going to call it skill view, since that's where all of the skills are going to be viewed. Am I right? Now what I'm thinking of having the button do is pop up another frame. So it's going to pop up essentially like a mini screen over here. And if you, for example, run into an issue where you have some sort of idea that you're trying to get done, but you're not too sure about the skills it would take, how you'd go about it, you're really going to have to just dig through and see what's available to you and find maybe a couple tutorials online that can help you look through it. I'll be covering many of the basics, but there really isn't enough time in the world to kind of go through all of these. So here's one cool trick. I would like to add a small frame over here. So I'm going to come down. I'm going to go to my screens and I'm going to add an internal frame form. This refers to a frame. Okay, hold on, just give me a second. Internal frame underscore capture. Now this little screen over here is an internal frame, meaning it's a frame that can be nested within another frame, so even a panel. Now these properties for the internal frame, or properties for any of the components really, can give you a very good indicator as to how you can customize them and what you could do with them. So I know that I'd like my frame to be closable just from the inside. I don't want it to close the entire app. So I can close that. And what I imagine for the frame, since it's focusing on capturing data from the user, I'm going to have a label. I'm also going to have a text field right next to it about yay. I'm going to have another label over here as well. And I'm going to have another text field right over there. Perfect. Okay, good. As soon as I put my labels and my components down, I can already begin naming them. I know I'm going to be using them. There's no point putting components on that you're not going to be using. For this example, I think what would be nice is maybe a first name, colon, first name, and I think just put an age over here. Should be fine. Good. Remember as well that because of the way Java Swing works, I think it's very difficult, or rather it just takes a lot of time to make it look good. And because not many marks are given to the actual design of your pat, The biggest thing is making sure that you focus on getting your functionality out and working. Remember, you want to be coding to the marks. Anything you do that would be very, very cool as a feature, but doesn't really take your pat anywhere, is taking time away from guaranteeing a good result. So we have first name, we have age, and then I think I want a button over here that's going to trigger an event. Good. And then just a basic text area to show how we can grab information from the user and actually move it around our program. Ooh. Okay, let's rename our components. We're going to call this text field underscore first name. We're going to rename this text field underscore age, and we're going to rename this text area to text area underscore, I guess, results should work. This button, I'm going to call it capture, and I'm going to rename it to button underscore capture. Great. Cool. Now that I have this frame, let's just go back. Okay, let me just save my work. Now that I'm at this screen, when this button is pressed, what I'd like to do is okay, that is an internal frame underscore capture. IFC object is equal to new internal frame underscore capture. Okay, good. Now, what am I doing over here? Remember that Java is an object-oriented programming language, and the way we go about building GUIs is the exact same. You can see that we're working within a class. The class has a constructor, and it is calling methods. So previously, I just made this screen, this internal frame. And what this internal frame is a class. And any of the drag and drop that I've performed, all the code is actually generated for you when you perform the drag and drop. If you take a look at this nightmare, this shows you why building front-end programs in Java is actually such a hassle. Look at what a pain this is. What do you think it is for you to do it just by yourself? So my advice to students is always make use of the drag and drop feature. So we've made an object of this screen, of this frame. And now that I have the object, when the button is pressed, I would like to add it to the panel that we created. That panel is panel skill view. Great. Dot add, and I'd like to add that component. And what I'd also like to do is take it and set it to visible. Set visible is how we can toggle that the frame is shown or hidden, because when we call line 120 over here and we call this constructor and we end up instantiating this object, creating an instance of this object, it now exists in memory, but it's not really shown. When we say ifc object.setVisible, it is now going to pop it up and it's going to be visible. This line of code, panel underscore skill view dot add, is going to take the screen that I have over here in my project and is going to add it to this panel that's in front of you. Let's run it and see if it's working. Okay, great. It looks like I have sizing issues, but it does seem to work. There is a weird kind of infinity effect, but I can work with that. I think that's cool, and I can close it, which is quite nice. So let's go back here. Let's increase the size. I think the width was fine. Cool. Cool, that's perfect. Now we still haven't coded anything for these elements to work, so let's get to that right now. So if I come to the internal frame and I go to design, I would like that when this button is pressed, that the details in this text field and the details in this text field are displayed in this component over here, the text area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click the button. Now this is going to generate an action performed method, which is responsible for holding the code that is run when the button is pressed. So when it's pressed, I want to access the two text fields. So it is string first name and age. Now asking why is age a string? Because anytime we work with text fields, all of the data is considered string. So if we need to work with any numerical values, we're going to have to perform conversions. So now I can say first name. Nope. First name is equal to, should be text field underscore first name dot, okay, great, get text. Get text is the method that will pull the data that is in that field at the time of clicking the button. Now we're going to say age is equal to text field underscore age dot capital T, I'm sure, good, dot get text. Great. Now that I've grabbed this data and I've put it in variables that are within this method, I can now begin to move that data around. So I would like to add it to the text area underscore results dot. I can append, meaning I can continuously grow what is added to that. I could also set text, meaning that it'll completely refresh what is shown each time. I think I want to append, and I would like to append the first name plus a dash plus the age. And that is good. If I run this, capture that, there we go, our little screen pops up, which is quite cool. And now if I capture, I'm now just adding dashes. The reason for these dashes is because we are appending this. Even though these values are empty, this is appended every single time the button is clicked. We could accommodate for that. There are marks for defensive programming, meaning that you are handling the data you're working with and ensuring that your application performs its functions and doesn't give you any kind of irregularities, whether that's in the front end or the back end. We will take a look at that in a future skill. But let's just run this so we can see. So if I go to capture and I'm Cameron, let's just put 78. If I capture, that is good. Okay, we do have a couple of issues here. Let's go about fixing those. So I can see that every single time. So firstly, I added spacing over here. So one issue I think is that we can edit this results field. So I want to adjust that. And the second thing is that there's no real spacing given between the elements. So I think if they pop up in a new line each time, that could be cleaner. So let's go about implementing those. We're going to go to our internal frame. And now we're going to go to our text area, and we're going to go to properties, and editable, we're going to unclick, meaning the user will not be able to edit the data that's there. Secondly, every time that we add a row, we want to move the pointer to the next line. And that should be good. If I capture and I go to Cameron, I go to 78. Okay, perfect. That's how you can make use of text fields, labels, text areas, and buttons within the Swing library.